Okay. I think we are trying to get there. And we're finally here. Okay. Hello, everybody. Been having some technical issues tonight, so I apologize and appreciate y'all being here. We're going to give it a few minutes because we're going to try to share this on some of the other pages that have been sending in questions. And right now, there's no one even watching, so I'm talking to myself. But yeah, we'll give it a few minutes. Just let me know if you're out there. Just say hello, and I'll try not to get distracted too bad. We've got questions that were sent in, and we're going to go over those, and then we'll answer other questions that you might have about what this is about probate and estate matters. And we'll wait a little bit because I know we've got more people coming on that are probably eating dinner. But we're just going to go until all the questions have been answered, and hopefully this will go well. So say hello if you're out there. I see we got a few people out there. I just want to make sure you can hear me and it's coming through okay. I appreciate y'all being out there and sending in these questions. And this video will be saved, and then what we'll do is we'll post it, and that way if you miss part of it you can go back and watch it again. No one's saying hello. I'm wondering if that means no one's out there. Hello there, Valerie. Glad to see you're there. We got about 10 or 11 people. So I've got Bartlett attorney Phillip Walker. Are you on here yet? He's joining me. He's a estate planning probate lawyer from up here in the Bartlett area, and he's answered some of these questions. I know a lot about probate, but I do not try to practice law without a license. So there are a lot of procedural things that I know and answer. And really there are a lot of myths about probate. Thank you, Kelly. I've been gone from probate court for 10 years, and I still get calls probably monthly. It used to be weekly, and now it's monthly because I think people are forgetting. But I just love helping people. And so anyway, I was probate court clerk from 1994 to 2010, and loved that job. And really just since then, I've held some seminars about probate matters and myths, and I'm going to go over some of that. But want to make sure Phillip Walker, attorney's here. We're going to try to share this on the Bartlett page and the Heart of Bartlett page and the Arlington page, all of which folks had sent questions to us, and we've answered those, and I'm going to go over those because you never know what question will help somebody else. And thank you to my lovely assistant Valerie for if you type in a question, she'll write it down and give it to me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll ask Phillip, and he'll type in the answer once he gets on here. So y'all just continue to be patient. Our crowd is building. We got about 30 people. So anyway, how's everybody doing? Everybody surviving out here? Sort of been crazy these last few months. I did this first back in April. Seemed like most people were out of work, sitting at home during the daytime, and I thought, how can, hey, Sam, that's not funny. I thought, how can I spend time and be helpful? So decided to do this and had great feedback, and so decided that I would do it now at nighttime. But anyway, so already got questions coming in. Thank you, Dave. We'll get that addressed. So A lot of people ask me what I've been doing lately. Right before the virus hit, former city council member Brent Taylor, and he was on the county commission also. And actually, now he's election commissioner. He is a funeral director, and he's opening a new location and asked me to become the vice president of marketing and community outreach, and also sell pre-need funeral arrangements. And so just when I get started with that, supposed to be going out networking, setting up seminars, COVID hit us. And so anyway, it's been just trying to find a way to get information out to people and help people out and let them know what I'm up to. And really, estate planning is something that, from probate, I saw, unfortunately, a lot of families that they were not prepared. And so they had to go through the probate process, and then also they weren't prepared for death. And no one wants to talk about death. Trust me, I get it. I was at probate 16 years, but it's something that's inevitable. And so why not do things ahead of time so that you're not a burden on your family when you're gone? So let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and first of all, I'll tell you that I wanted to be with Phillip in his office, and where we could sort of be next to each other and sharing, the screen and answering questions back and forth. But unfortunately, we're just trying to take it safe and everything. So we decided we'd do it separate, and then I had technical issues, so it's pretty crazy. And we'll give you Phillip's information. I'm going to get Phillip to type in his address. He's right there at Highway 70 and Appling. In that area is his office, but we'll talk about some of that stuff later. So, and I'll ask that question from Dave Stewart. Will be one that we'll let Phillip tackle. But anyway, so let me just say, first of all, I want to remind y'all again to type in any questions like you're doing. We'll get them, and if I can't answer them, we'll ask Phillip to answer those. And I want to start, first of all, with some probate matters and myths. And this is just things that over the years people think, and I just want to tell you about it. First of all, probate court is where wills and estates are handled. Conservatorships over elderly people are handled if someone does not have a power of attorney over themselves and they lose their physical or mental capabilities. Then you have to go to probate court to be appointed conservator. But probate means to prove a will. Okay, that's what it means. And a will is not official until it's gone to probate court and been proven to be valid. And a will is basically, I'll tell you what should be in a will here in a minute when I'm going to read. I've got this brochure that what I'm going to try to do is I put it together when I was probate court clerk, and it answers a lot of these questions, but it's something that you can print off, and you'll be able to print off, and it's got a lot of helpful information on there, but I'll go over that in just a minute. But some people, they ask, what if you die without a will? First of all, verbal doesn't matter. I've had people say, Mama wanted me to have her, name it, you name it, jewelry, whatever. But if Mama didn't write it down or Mama didn't give it to you before she died, there could be fights. Unfortunately, it's amazing how, unfortunately, when families can get along just great, and then when someone passes away, things can really get ugly. So, anyway, one thing people think is that everyone who passes away, their family has to go through probate, and that's not necessarily true. You can have joint right of survivorship, like for instance at banks. You open an account, you can put payable upon death, name a beneficiary on that bank account. Payable upon death means it would go to that person. There are things that can be held with right of survivorship. Any life insurance you have, make sure you have a beneficiary listed. Any asset, basically, you need to have someone else's name on there, either as co-owner or as not just co-owner, but as a beneficiary. Phillip Walker's here. Thank you, Phillip. A couple other questions you can see there from Dave Stewart and Ashley Wood that we'll get Phillip to address. But also, the myth is every will has to be probated. That's not true. If all the assets a person has are in the decedent's or not in the decedent's name only, for instance, bank account, if it has what I just talked about, paid upon death, a home, any assets you have, if they're not in the decedent's name only, does not necessarily have to go to probate. When my aunt died, she only had a home, and all her other, she had a will, but she only had a house that was in her name only. Her bank accounts had her son's name on it, no problem. She wanted the kids to get everything evenly. And then so with the house, and that was one of the questions we got, is that's an asset that you can do, if it's paid for, do affidavits of heirship at the county registrar's office and get that filled out and get that recorded, and that becomes your deed. Another myth is that claims and or bills in the decedent's name only, a lot of people think they've got to be paid. Not necessarily. If it's in just your mama's name and there's no estate in probate, then those claims do not have to be paid, and you can just get the death certificate, write to the credit card company or whomever and say, Mama died, there's no estate, we don't have any money to pay you. And some people tell me, well, Mama, I just feel better paying it. And I just say, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to do what you think you should do, but legally that money is the heirs. And by the way, Phillip, if I misspeak on anything, you make sure you correct me. It won't hurt my feelings. I've been out of probate for 10 years. Also, there is something called a small estate affidavit. That used to be $25,000. We got changed to $50,000, but basically saying that if you have assets totaling, liquid assets totaling less than $50,000, that you can go get the forms at probate court off the website, and the procedure may have changed now to where you have to have a bond or don't have to have a bond. You don't have to have an attorney. That can save you some money, but if it could get complicated if there's like an heir that's not being cooperative. I usually say, hey, you might want to get an attorney, especially if it's a good bit of money, if it's like thousands and thousands of dollars. Sometimes if it's a $250 bank account, it's not even worth dealing with it because of court cost and a bond, it's not even worth fooling with. But the let me look here. Let me just go through this on the wills brochure I talked about. I will, once this is over, I will copy, because I'm not technically able to do that now, but I will put those in the comments and find a way for y'all to print this off. But basically, it asks what a will is. A lot of people get confused. First of all, a living will is not the same as a regular estate will. A living will is the second thing they'll ask you for when you go to the hospital. They ask you, first of all, if you can pay, and then they ask if there's a living will. That tells what you want to happen to your body or what wishes you have. If you are incapacitated, do you want to put on artificial life support, tube in your feeding tube, etc. That's a living will. So will is just a legal document by which you instruct what's to be done with your property after your death. And I always say, get an attorney like Phillip Walker, who does a great job. He can help you with that, draw that up, and the more complicated it is, your life is. I mean, if you have businesses and stuff, you definitely need a will. I've got a friend now, owns a business, doesn't have a will, and he and I talked about that the other day, how important that is. Let me tell you what happens if you do not have a will. A lot of people think also, they think that everything's going to go to the state, and that's not true. If you die without executing a will, here's how it's governed by intestate succession. If you're married and without children at your death, your estate passes entirely to your surviving spouse. Okay? If you're married and have children, your estate passes to your children and your surviving spouse. If you're unmarried but have children, your estate passes to your children. If you're unmarried and without children, your estate will pass to your parents if they survive you, otherwise your brothers and sisters. Ultimately, if there's no family member ascertained, the estate does pass to the estate of Tennessee, which, like I said, is another good reason to plan ahead and have a will. No offense, state of Tennessee, but we don't want people giving the money when they should be going to either family, and I know people that don't have any family, and they leave a will and put it to St. Jude or the Humane Society or whoever their favorite charity is. So what should be included in a will? Phillip can tell you that, but basically this tells you here, appoint a personal representative, get someone you know and trust and love that you know will do the right thing, although by law, if they probate the will, they're going to have to do the right thing. Provide for how you want your property to be distributed. Might just say sell everything and divide between my 3 children. You might say give a certain amount of money to your grandchildren. But that's something that an attorney could be able to, like Phillip said, can tell you on that. You would also want to appoint a guardian for minor children. I had someone ask me the other day. They want to make sure their child's father actually has no parental rights, and they want to make sure that, because he's not a very good person, I'll just leave it at that. They want to make sure that father doesn't get the child because of drug issues, and it would not be good. So you need to put that in a will. And then basic, any other personal concerns, you can put in there funeral arrangements, etc. I got asked this last week, is a handwritten will legal? Yes, a handwritten will is legal in Tennessee, provided the document is entirely in your own handwriting and is signed by you. It's called a holographic will. And following your death, the authenticity of your handwriting must be proved by 2 individuals that are non-interested parties. When I was probate court clerk, we had a napkin was probated, believe it or not, and it was valid because apparently this couple was sitting at dinner one night and had a paper napkin, and I think it was the husband had written out, they were just talking, and he wrote out what he wanted to happen to certain things, et cetera, and he signed it and dated it. And when he died, they had not had a chance to get to an attorney, and that was probated as a will. So, but I always recommend going to someone like Phillip Walker, probate attorney, estate planner. Another question is, how do you revoke your will? It's a good question. You can physically destroy it. You can sign a document expressly revoking your will, or you can sign another will. If you get divorced after you sign your will, the will is automatically revoked as to any provisions concerning your ex-spouse. If you marry and have children after signing your will, the entire will is automatically revoked. So it's important to remember that if those events happen, you need to look at your will and make sure that you get that taken care of. One thing I want to point out is I get asked a lot about power of attorney. I've heard people say after their mama died or daddy died, they said, well, I'm mama's power of attorney, so I'm going to go to the bank and get the money. Well, if the bank knows mama or father has passed away, the power of attorney dies when the person dies. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear. Power of attorneys are very important, and Phillip can help draw one of those up, but they die when the person dies. So that's this brochure. I will try to put it, like I said, my buddy Brian here, the technological guy whose house I had to come to, and I appreciate that. He will try to help me figure out how to do that. But I do want to remind you, some people are coming in and out, joining us, that Phillip Walker, attorney, and Bartlett is joining me on here. I'm doing this to remind those that just may have jumped on. A couple reasons. One is it's just important with my background, having seen probate court and the devastation of families that were not prepared when someone passed away. They had to go through probate court. And also because of my new job as Vice President of Marketing and Community Outreach for Funeral Director Brent Taylor, former City Council member, I thought it'd be a good way to also talk about, I'm not going to go into all that, but pre-planning a funeral. It's funny, it's not funny but sad, but 1 out of 250 people use their car insurance, but almost everybody has it. Only 1 out of 250,000 people file a claim on their homeowner's insurance. But the one thing that is 100% sure going to happen unless the rapture happens, we're going to die. A lot of people don't pre-plan their funerals. And I have just seen so many people. A friend called me last week. Her dad died unexpectedly. They did not have anything arranged. And unfortunately, they spent 4 to 6 hours on the worst day of their life having to plan a funeral. And it's something that you could spend an hour and a half to 2 hours while you and your spouse are still alive, and we could come out, meet with you, give you a family planning guide. You can plan out everything, your own funeral and everything. I know it sounds morbid, but listen, you don't want to be a burden on your family. I've seen it. Some of y'all have experienced it. It's really a sad thing. But, so that's why I'm doing this, is also to give you information, give you a good attorney to talk to, let you know you can talk to me. Let me go over some of these other questions. And I appreciate Phillip has given the answers ahead of time, so I'll read them. And Phillip, if you'll type in your address and how they can contact you down there, and then answer, if you can be answering Dave and Ashley's questions. But this question said, I've heard conflicting information about what must go through probate. One person said if your house is worth more than $100,000, it must go through probate after your death. That is not true. It has nothing to do with the value of the home. If that home is $100,000, $50,000, or how much ever the value is, if it has someone else's name on there, it does not have to go through probate as an owner. And also, the chances are very strong, unless there's something crazy going on out there, that the heirs can go to, if there's not a will, that the heirs can go do that affidavit of heirship like I talked about. Now, there was an incident lately I sent to Phillip because there were 3 children. There was only the house and the father's name, but 2 of the children were, let's just say, not of the highest moral character, and they were not going to cooperate. And so the best thing for them to do was to go to court. So sometimes it happens, but I know you try not to do that. Let's see what else I've got here. Power of attorney I've already talked about. If the only asset was a home and a car, and it was in the deceased name only, once again, you don't have to go to probate. I talked about the house, but the car is the same thing. The county clerk's office has affidavits of heirship, and you can get those off their website, fill those out, and take that down there, and then they will get you a new title in your name or in the heir's name. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let me see. Talked about the living will. So these questions were ones that fortunately Phillip sent in, or he was asked, and he sent me the answers to them. I was told a husband and wife should have separate wills. Is this true? And if so, why? Yes, joint wills are a contract and cannot be changed after the death of the first spouse. So you can have separate. You should have separate wills because, like he said, if you're both names on there, they can't be changed after one is deceased. So each spouse should have your own will. What if there was a will written by an attorney leaving a home to someone, but the beneficiary cannot locate the will? The attorney has also passed away. Is there a way to get an official copy? There is no official copy of a will. If the original cannot be found, a copy of the will can be filed for probate if there is evidence the original is not revoked by the maker of the will. There's an outside chance that the original may be filed with the probate court clerk's office. This drove me crazy because there's a law that allows people to pay, back then, $5 and put their original will in the safe at probate court. Well, the problem is they didn't tell their family where the will was. And so sometimes people would come down and they would just think there wasn't a will, and they would open an estate, but there was a will. We just didn't know about it because they didn't, back then we didn't have a database. We just had to, they said the will's in probate safe, we would go find it. But that's something that in this family planning guide, that if we come out and meet with you about pre-planning your funeral, you would put in there where your will is and who has your will. Does a living trust bypass probate? In most cases, yes, it is intended to do so, but there are often assets found that were not transferred to the trust, and those may have to be administered through probate. And I think, Phillip, that's called a spillover will. So for the most part, it will avoid probate. And Phillip, if he gets a chance, can address the tax implications on that. And I've already said that if there's a will, you do not have to go through probate necessarily. Should a parent give title to a home and assets to children before the death to save taxes? Phillip almost always advises against doing this because it has negative capital gain tax consequences when the property is sold. So that answers that question that came in. You see here, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, got things coming in. Get another question coming in here. Can you explain briefly advantages, if any, to a trust over a will? Trust has a benefit of privacy and ease of transfer of some types of property, such as real estate. This is particularly true if you own property, if it's in more than one state. So that's advantages of privacy, because a trust is not public information, whereas an estate, a will is. I mean, I was there, and anyone can order a copy of anyone's will that's been probated. I mean, obviously, we sold lots of Elvis's. That was obviously the most popular will that we sold copies of, but that was legal, so we did it. So Tennessee has and he said Tennessee has very progressive laws, trust laws regarding asset protection, minimizing taxes and other benefits. What is the cost to prepare a simple will? Costs will vary. A simple will in this area is probably between $500 and $750, but trust me, it's a good investment. The real value in having a competent attorney prepare your will instead of a form processing website is the advice and counsel, which can save your heirs time and money at death. Very good point, because those form wills, you can plug in the holes, but when you're sitting there with an attorney like Phillip, he can ask you certain questions that they're not going to ask you when you're just sitting there filling out a form. What if someone was married and had no kids, but had nieces and nephews? How does one prepare in case a spouse dies? You should decide what you want your estate to benefit when you die. If it's the extended family, name them in the will. If it's a charity or a cause, you can leave it there. So that's what I talked about earlier about someone that didn't have any family. Or they only had nieces and nephews. So have your will and write out what you want them to have. I mean, it's very simple. It's very important to plan ahead. Is a will transferable to another state? Yes, most states will recognize an out-of-state will that was executed according to the law of the state, of our state. So that's not a problem. The average cost to probate a will varies a lot depending on what makes up the estate, what the will directs be done with the property, and whether there are any complications. Court costs in Shelby County will be between $350 to $400 for a simple estate, and there's a fee schedule in the local rules at probate court, but it's merely advisory. The judge has the ultimate say when deciding what the lawyer and executor is paid, and it depends on, like he's saying, how complicated the estate is. If it's simple, and they don't have to do as much, they probably won't be paid as much. If they have had to put a lot of time in, then they would probably get more. My father never remarried, and it's just me and my sister. Will the money be divided evenly if there was no will? And the answer is yes. If you're the only children, then it will be divided evenly. So those are the written questions that we had gotten in. We've got two more, and I'm going to need to look at. Let me see, from Ashley here. I am my mom's beneficiary. Does she need to put her savings in my name? Does she need to make a will if I will receive everything? Ashley, great question. If she's listed you as a beneficiary on everything, all of her liquid assets and savings account, if you're co-owner of the account, then everything would go to you. If there's anything found after her death, any kind of bank accounts or anything that were in her name only without a beneficiary listed, then that would have to go to probate. So, very good question. I've printed my own trust to place inside. Do I need to print it and place in safe place, or does it need to be filed somewhere? Phillip texted me. He's having some technical difficulties, which is why we got him to answer these questions ahead of time. But on that one, it's funny. two things. One is what we tell people when we meet with them about pre-planning their funeral, and that family planning document that we give them is to put it in a gallon storage Ziploc bag and put it in your freezer. Sounds crazy, but you've seen on TV probably houses burned to the ground, the refrigerator's still standing. The freezer, although everything will be melted, the food will not be any good, obviously, but the contents in that will still be there. So I would suggest doing that. Don't want to do that, then you can put it in someone had a gun safe that was fireproof, and they said that's where they have all their documents. Great. Make sure someone knows where it is. Trying to think where else they were talking about. Yeah, putting it in the safety deposit box. But the only problem with that is once someone passes away, normally the banks do not allow anyone other than the person named on the account, the safe deposit box, or whoever they allow to get in there. So if you're that person that has not just the key, because I talked to a bank president the other day, he said you can't just have the key, you've got to have you can't just have the key, you've got to have your name on that account. And so just keep that in mind. I see Phillip is answering. I'm sorry I wasn't able to scroll down. He's answered your questions, and I didn't even know that, and I apologize. Thank you. Got another question. Hello, Leah Johnson, my daughter, and other friends. I was not scrolling down because I'm technically challenged right now. But, yeah, there's Phillip's office number. There's his address. And so Phillip's answering these questions from y'all. And, man, I appreciate you so much, Phillip. Hey, Lisa Irwin, thank you for your sweet comments. Lisa worked for Joe Duncan, an incredible attorney downtown, and he finally retired after probably 50-something years, but he was a great man and very fortunate. So thank you, Lisa. I won't be running for probate court again after 2018, but let's see. Any other questions coming in? Let me see. We got one. If we sell my deceased mom's house, do we pay inheritance tax? So did you already answer that? Yeah, I see that, Phillip. You answered that good. So, again, for those that just jumped on here, we got people coming and going as usual on these things because I get boring sometimes. But I wanted to do this again because we've had so much, with this COVID virus and everything, and people being stuck at home. A lot of people stuck at home. I thought, how can I, in my new job, how can I, first of all, network when that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And then also I have some knowledge that I wanted to share with people. And once again, I'll just repeat this. And first of all, this will be saved, and my buddy Brian will help me get it loaded up on YouTube. And then we tried to share it tonight, and I'm not sure if it happened, on Arlington Bartlett and the Heart of Bartlett page. And so anyway, hopefully it's out there, but we'll save it. And Phillip, I don't know if you saw Angie's question. I'm trying to look here and see. There it is. There it is to Angie. The Tennessee inheritance tax was repealed. The federal estate tax exemption is over $11 million. You'll have capital gain tax if you sell the property. So thank you, Gail and Darren, for being on here. Also, just want to remind you, I was talking about COVID, but so I tried to figure out how can I network, and so I thought about Phillip, and I live up in Lakeland. He's in Bartlett, and I represented all the suburbs when I was on the county commission. But I just thought, well, let's try to do this. And so once again, my thing is how important it is to plan your estate. I've seen the devastation. I'm sorry I'm repeating for those that are still on here, but the new people. When I was at probate court, I saw the devastated families that would come in because they'd done nothing. There was no will, it was on someone had their name on an account. People hadn't prepared for their funeral. They had to beg, borrow, and not steal, hopefully, money to pay for a funeral. And on the worst day of your life, you do not want to have to plan a funeral. So that's why, like I said, I'm working now as Vice President of Marketing and Outreach, Director of Community Outreach for Brent Taylor, former City Council member who owns several funeral homes in the area and opened a new location in May over off, not May, that was supposed to have already happened. So you can tell I did this in March. It's supposed to be opening now in August. This COVID has slowed down a lot of things, hasn't it? So if you would like for me to come out and meet with you and your spouse if you're married, we'll give you a free family planning guide, a simple living will, and power of attorney. And then you can fill out that family planning guide. We'll go over pre-need. You can lock in today's prices and actually pay off your funeral for 10 years. And I won't go into that unless we come into your home. But send me a private message. My number is right here. I will just type it right here because I've had a public number all my life if I can find it. But yeah, contact me. I try to be very available. I love serving the community. I was blessed to be able to do that for over 25 years. But yeah, Brent Taylor, funeral director, great guy, one of the best public servants we've ever had. Here's another question. When considering heirs, does legally separated still mean legally married? Phillip, did you get a chance to see that one? Legally separated, does that still mean legally married? That's an interesting question. I'm going to let Phillip answer that one because I would think the answer is yes, but we'll give Phillip a chance to answer that one because I have been known to give the wrong answer sometime. But let's see. If I want one of my three daughters to have sole possession of my home once I am gone and have it paid for my estate, will a codicil to my will be adequate? I can let Phillip answer that. I believe the answer is yes. You could also just put her name on there as co-owner and get her put on the deed. But Phillip, make sure that I'm getting that information right. He's coming in and replying to Angie. Phillip's typing his little fingers off. There's a few more questions after that for Sharon. Gail, the average price of a funeral these days in Memphis, because you've got these big corporate-owned funeral homes with a lot of overhead, is, my friend told me the other day when they left after, like I said earlier, you may not have heard, they spent 4 to 6 hours in the funeral home at one of the big corporate places, because her mom thought that's where they had to go because they own cemetery property. They spent $20,000. We normally, with Brent Taylor and the parent company's Brentwood Funeral Homes, we average $4,000 to $5,000 less than that. Every 10 years, a funeral doubles. I mean, just like everything seems to go up. But every 10 years, the cost of a funeral doubles. But the good thing about pre-planning is you lock in today's price. I talked to a friend the other day. It really shocked me, but he's close to my age. He's about 50, and he's been married about 28 years and told me that basically 3 years after they were married, they pre-arranged their funerals, which is unusual for people in their 20s, but they've locked in prices that have tripled since then. So after I started working for Brent, I posted I was working for Brent, etc., and this lady messaged me and posted publicly and then messaged me privately that she wished she'd known that a week ago because she went to, I won't say which one because I'm not going to name them. They're great people, but to one of the big corporately owned funeral homes here in town and spent $17,000 and just said, I mean, it really, she was really hurt. But when it's the worst day of your life, you don't want to be making big decisions like planning a funeral. So that's why I tell people, plan your estate, plan your funeral, because those are things, I mean, that it's 100% sure there's no way out unless the rapture comes, if you're a believer and you believe that like I do. But so I just tell people to plan ahead, and I've unfortunately had some friends that unfortunately have lost loved ones, 2 under 25 years old. And very sad, but they reached out to me and we were able to help them out because those 25-year-olds, obviously you don't think anything's going to happen, and it shouldn't have happened, but unfortunately it did. But especially, I mean, it's just good to do. I mean, like I said, you've got car insurance, homeowners insurance, hopefully you got life insurance. But we'll talk about that if we come meet with you. But a lot of people think, hey, I've got life insurance, so I don't need to plan my funeral. That's not true. All that life insurance is doing is paying for it. But all those decisions that your loved one, the burden they will have to go through on the worst day of their life, I mean, think about that. That's what you want to spare, is you don't want to put your family through that burden. But this is not a pre-need seminar. This is more about probate. But they sort of tie together, because obviously the probate part comes after someone's deceased. So I try to tell people to plan for your funeral, and you can pay for it over 10 years, like I said. And if you're doing that and you die within 2 years, it's paid off. So anyway, let's see. Phillip's answering the questions there. Thank you, Phillip. What other questions y'all got? They can be personal. No, I'm just kidding. Anything exciting been going on out there? I'm hoping you can share this. We're going to try to make it where you can share it on your page. Share it with friends and family. We'll put it, like I said, make it on YouTube so that people can have it, because it's just helpful information, and I wanted to be able to share it with folks. And if you need me, my phone number's in these comments here. And like I said, later I will try to post these the Wills in Tennessee brochure. Unfortunately, after I left probate court, they no longer have those brochures down there. But that's another story. I hate that, because I've got the only copies. But we also did a book when I was there. We developed a book called Practical Suggestions for Attorneys Practicing in Probate Court. Lisa Irwin, you probably remember that one, and Phillip, I think you probably do too. But I got with a team of attorneys and the judges, and just basically it was a step, because probate court, the clerk's office is basically, and I'm not going to get into this because I'll be losing y'all like crazy, but it's basically a lot of procedural stuff. And I try to tell people how to avoid probate, but then I do say, hey, if you need a good attorney, depending on what part of town you're in, but certainly Phillip Walker out here in the north area, I mean, he can help you if you're in Germantown or wherever. Is great. I know a lot of great attorneys, friends of mine. Just happen to know Phillip from up here in the Bartlett area. Worked on some folks' campaigns together. I'm going to be wrapping this up here in a few minutes, so I just want to get any other questions that y'all may have. Just type them in down there. How y'all holding up down there? Okay, I got a question here. Oh, Phillip said he's got a copy of the brochure and the practical solutions. Good. I'm sure that's changed, but unfortunately, I don't know if the clerks have kept it up to date. But pre-planning a funeral, if they just want to be cremated, should they be pre-planned as well? Great question, and yes, because that price will also go up. You can do a pre-planning cremation service. That's what, unfortunately, one of my friends' nephew, who was 23, passed away a couple of weeks ago. And she contacted me, and they ended up having it was a visitation, but a service, but he was cremated. More and more people are being cremated these days, and also more and more people are pre-planning their funeral. It's grown like from 20,000 in the 70s to 22 million people now. So I mean, it's really skyrocketed, and it's what I'm doing now. I still love helping people, and it's helping people not be a burden on them, their families. And so if you want me to come out and meet with you, just shoot me a phone call, message me on Facebook. Phillip, do you have anything to add? Anything you can think I've left out that we didn't get questions about, but maybe you'd like to share with folks? And others can still ask questions. But Phillip, I appreciate you being on here. Sorry we couldn't do the in-person thing, but technical difficulties. But the current basic cost of cremation. The cremation service, where you have a service, and the body is not there, is right at $4,000 with us. Okay, and that's, like I said, that's a visitation, a service, and cremation, and that's the part of picking up the body, etc. And I won't go into details. It might, some of y'all might freak out, but you can also have for about $6,000, you can have a service where the body, you have a viewing beforehand, and then you have a service, and then you have the cremation. The service ends at the place. You're welcome, David. Something a lot of people are doing now more and more is they are having their services at churches. Today was the first visitation. A friend of mine's father passed away. It was the first funeral service, visitation, whatever, that I've been to in a long time that was at an actual funeral home. Let's see, am I doing just a service, also the burial space? Good question. Thank you, Kelly. We do not have cemetery plots here. Brent owns one funeral home down in cemetery down in Mississippi, and that's a good point to bring up, because this friend of mine's mom, they had burial plots out at one of those corporate places out on Poplar, so she felt like she had to go, and that's where they had to have the funeral planned. And so after she spent $20,000 and 6 long hours, very emotional hours there, that's where they ended up having the service. But I've told my friend, obviously she said, well, I'm not going to go through this with my mom. We're going to get with you. But you can be buried anywhere. We have, there are cemeteries. Part of my family is buried over off Raleigh-LaGrange, across from that new Walmart, or the Walmart off Raleigh-LaGrange. But there's not a funeral home there. So it's just a cemetery. And, there's cemeteries at churches. And so, with this new location we're going to have, it's one of the first there are here in Shelby County. It will be where you go and you make your arrangements, you plan your service, your family service, you pick out a casket, you pick out a vault, but the actual service will not be held there. It will be held at a church or another venue. And because you really don't need a funeral home, you need a funeral director, because so many people, like I said, are having funerals at churches and other places. We've had people have funeral services at the Botanic Garden. So things are changing, as you know. Used to funerals were, they were all the same. Now there's celebrations of life. Met with a guy the other day, and he said he wants a party, and so he wants to pre-plan. He wants to pre-plan and pay for, and it's not a guaranteed amount because we don't know when he's going to die and what the cost will be. But he wants to pay for a party. So certainly, he said he'll be the guest of honor, and so anyway, I thought that was funny. But that's just, hey, you can do whatever you want to. That's a good thing about planning ahead, because also your family's not going to be fighting over things. We've actually had, tell you this story real quick and get to Phillip's answer there. But we've actually had families fight over whether or not Mama wears her glasses in the casket, literally. Siblings on each side of the table. 2 said yes, 2 said no, and one of them threw a pin at one of them. It's crazy. But if you're able to plan it now to save your family that burden, man, it's worth it. So, Phillip, I'm going to read it. It says, you can always benefit from having a will, durable power of attorney, and an advanced care plan. As Chris mentioned, planning ahead gives you peace of mind and is a loving gesture to relieve your loved ones from making difficult decisions at a time of crisis. Man, I couldn't have said that any better. That goes for estate planning, pre-need funeral arrangements. My mom's unfortunately in a nursing home. Appreciate all the prayers from my friends out there. She's doing okay, but we've pre-arranged her funeral. It's something that you just need to do, folks. You don't need to wait till someone's 80, and we can come out and meet with you one-on-one, depending on your age and situation, how much it would be. But if there's nothing else, man, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sharing information, just helping people. And so Phillip Walker's number is on here, his contact info. I put my phone number there. You know how to find me if you'd like us to come out and meet with you and give you that free family planning guide and just go over things with you. Then we would certainly love to do that. So share this with your friends and family. And Phillip, you don't have anything else. You wrapped it up right there, brother, with what you said. So, hey, I appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight. Great questions. If you think of something later, maybe you're watching this tomorrow or in August, and you think of a question, message me, message Phillip. We'll be glad to help you. And I think with that, I'm just going to say good night. And look, y'all stay safe. And hey, one thing real quick I want to say, sorry about this virus, but I was online with the Arlington Chamber the other day for a luncheon, and Tanya, the head of the Arlington Chamber, was reminding people, don't get mad at these business places and be going off on them when it's not their fault that people are having to wear a mask. And I'm not going to get into a debate about that. My point is, we need to support these local businesses and these businesses. It's the health department put in the rule, whether you like it or not. I got people on here that love it and people here that hate it. My point is, don't take it out on our local businesses. In Arlington, Bartlett, this whole community needs our support. So let me see what else came in. Oh, there it is. Phillip answered Kelly. I can verify that a decree of legal separation does not terminate status as surviving spouse, but beware of the agreement. Interesting. So I sort of thought that, but wasn't sure. So anyway, but you're welcome, Sharon and Gail, and all you that ask questions. Hey, man, Dave, and all y'all, I appreciate y'all tuning in. And now y'all go get some dinner. And God bless y'all, and y'all hang in there, okay? Thanks a lot.